take control of their own health and be able to utilize some of the new tools, whether that's remote monitoring with clinical grade wearables or if it's an AI-based software. But really telling patients that they can be in charge. They can be the CEO, right? Because up until a few years ago, it was a very paternalistic industry, and it still is in many countries around the world.
Welcome to the Risk Never Sleeps podcast, in which we learn about the people that are on the front lines delivering patient care and protecting patient safety. I'm Ed Gaudet, the host of our program, and today I am pleased to be joined by Farmanfarmaian. Hi, Robin. How are you?
I'm so excited to talk to you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing fine. You know, a little. I've been on the road the last couple of weeks, so I'm starting to feel that. Years ago I used to love it, and now it's becoming it's a lot harder than I remember. So. So it seems like it takes a little bit out of me these days, but I'm good, generally good. Thank you. Had a nice weekend. How about you?
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. I'm just back from Miami too.
Oh, Miami. Nice. I was in San Diego, the other side of the world. Yeah.
So we both crossed over and I came back to California when you went back to Massachusetts.
That's right. Now, where do you live? Where in California are you?
I'm in downtown Palo Alto. But I'm actually from New Hampshire and Massachusetts. So I grew up, in New Hampshire and Mass.
You did. Yeah. And I've spent most of my life on the West Coast, but I live here in Boston. So
we're just living exact opposite lives.
Probably. Well, let's see how much else we have in common. So tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your current organization and your role.
Sure. So I am a professional speaker and early stage entrepreneur across pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and AI-based software. And so I'm working on a number of companies right now. One is an AI-driven ultrasound for breast cancer detection. Wow. Does not require a clinician to actually perform the ultrasound, which is a very big deal.
That's cool.
Is that cool? Another one I'm doing is VR for radiology. And so putting a radiology reading room into, a 3D world, which is really cool. And you can have things like tumor boards inside that. And I co-founded two companies this year. One is a generative AI medical scribe, because, had to get in there. And the other one is around keeping companies up to date with AI regulations and governance.
Wow. So Risk never sleeps and Robin never sleeps.
Exactly.
You've been busy and you're still smiling. I love it. How did you get into healthcare?
So as a teenager, I was misdiagnosed and I've had all told 43 hospitalizations, 6 major surgeries, and 3 organs removed. And by the time I was 26, this was 7 years after I had a total colectomy with J-pouch, which is removal of the entire large intestine. I moved out to California and my new care team ended up diagnosing me correctly with Crohn's. And after a 13-year misdiagnosis, I went on the right medication, which is Remicade in my case, and I went into remission overnight.
Oh, it's just, what an incredible story. I listened to one of your talks, recorded talks, and I was just blown away at how the health system failed you.
And my mom was a physician. And my dad is an IP attorney from MIT who works on cutting edge, everything cutting edge, but he does work a lot in the biotech and the medical space. And so I just say, diagnostics are hard. And we only have treatment for a few hundred diseases to begin with, right? Diagnostics are hard.
Yeah, that's true. When I was younger, I had nothing as awful as that happen, but I had a misdiagnosis and I just wouldn't accept it. And I kept pushing back. And basically I had a foot drop early on and they thought I had Charcot-Marie-Tooth, which is basically a neurodegenerative disease, which, would have led me into a wheelchair at a very young age. And after the 5th or 6th diagnosis, the physician asked me if I crossed my legs. And I said, yeah, I do. Stop crossing your legs, he said. You're cutting off your nerve. I know. Can you believe it?
It's mind blowing.
I know. And after like all these muscle stimulation tests and everything else I went through, I might have exaggerated. Maybe it wasn't 6, maybe it was like 4 doctors, but still it was,
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible. But you're right. It's so difficult to get it right. And yet there we go, trying to get it right so often. So what do you think leads to that?
Well, I mean, if you look at the healthcare industry as it relates to humankind, right? We've only launched, penicillin was discovered in the 1930s. It was launched and commercially available widely in the 1950s. It has only been 70 years since one of the biggest things to hit healthcare has happened, right? And so I personally am extremely grateful that I get to live now when I actually can go into remission. I mean, 30 or 40 years ago, there was no hope, right? And that's for millions of years.
Yeah. Yeah. And I noticed your mandate's a big mandate. You want to affect 100 million patients.
You know, if you're going to do something, you may as well go big.
Go big or go home, as they say, right?
Exactly.
So tell us how you're doing on that quest.
Sure. So it depends. I mean, I've worked with over 20 early stage companies and they take a while. And I've made a number of very small investments in some pharmaceutical companies. Again, it's not something you see returns on or even hitting the market for 15, sometimes even 20 years. And so I haven't been able to account so far, but I have worked on curing cancer. We failed, but we were working on the P53 pathway, which is damaged in about 50% of all cancer. I've invested in a vaccine, inhaled insulin, and really cool things like that. But on the professional speaking side, I definitely have impacted tens of thousands, if not a lot more, and really take control of their own health and be able to utilize some of the new tools, whether that's remote monitoring with clinical grade wearables or if it's an AI-based software, but really telling patients that they can be in charge. They can be the CEO, right? Because up until a few years ago, it was a very paternalistic industry, and it still is in many countries around the world.
Now, that's a great point. What advice do you have for folks that want to advocate on behalf of themselves for their own care? Where can they start?
Yeah, so it's that mind shift. Be like, all right, you know what? The doctor is no longer the authority figure. And because that's how it always felt, like policemen, doctors, like they're authority figures. To go in there saying, I am the CEO and I know how I want to live my life, what I want to feel like, and what I think I'm going to actually do. And in that case, all of a sudden, the healthcare system works for you, not the other way around. And so that's the biggest step, is understanding that point.
Just having that mind shift and going from there. Yeah, it's really important.
Exactly.
Yeah. Attitude is so much these days, isn't it?
It's huge. I think half of why I survived is, and I'm thriving, right? And I'm giving keynotes in 16 countries. So I travel the world with Crohn's disease, which is, usually pretty scary for a patient. Yeah. But I think half of it is medical care, right? Remicade. Mm-hmm. The other half is attitude and exercise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Something I have to do the latter of. So I got to find time to exercise. Thank you for reminding me of that. So as you look out over the next 2 years, what are your top 3 priorities?
So generative AI medical scribes, right? And so we're going into beta right now. We're starting to bring some doctors on to kind of test out the software. And the second one, the AI regulatory space, because it's moving so quickly. And there's new things to think about on a daily basis that I think I can really help make a difference for corporations. I mean, the big corporations that take care of the healthcare system, from payers to pharma to medical devices. And so if I can enable them to stay at, inside of regulation and governance, that's a big win.
Yeah. And it's a lot of time, obviously a lot of effort that we spend wrestling with the regulations and obviously trying to not only do the right thing, but do it in a way that continues to move the business forward, which I think is a really big idea.
Yes.
As you look out over the last couple of years, we had the pandemic, really difficult time for folks. We're coming on our 4th year now of the pandemic. What are you most personally and professionally proud of?
What am I most proud of? Well, I mean, I would have to say probably the keynotes that I'm able to do, because I do a different keynote for every single client. And so last week I had a keynote for Stanford at their NICU, so the newborn intensive care unit. And then 4 days later, I had a keynote for a senior living facilities conference in Miami. And so really being able to teach even doctors, because doctors do not know a lot of the stuff that's going on out there. They're so busy in their daily life, and there's so many papers coming out on a daily basis in their specialty that to learn about the stuff that I talk about, they don't even know it's there to go look for it. Right. And so I can make a huge difference with providers, insurance companies, and the ones that really impact patient care.
Yeah. And help them close that gap in knowledge, right, as they're continuing to do their day job. Which,
exactly.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. For those in healthcare and technology, we spend an enormous amount of time, obviously trying to keep up with the latest and greatest. So, but we're not necessarily delivering care. Those folks that are delivering care, yeah, no, that's really good. Outside of this job that is a big job and keeps you on the road, I'm sure, quite a bit. What would you be doing if you weren't doing this? Like, what are you most passionate about? Like, do you have any hobbies or?
I mean, love what you do and you never work a day in your life. And I absolutely love everything I get to do. I am so grateful that I can work in these kinds of things, that I'm a female and I can, be in the workforce. I think about that kind of stuff a lot.
Yeah. So other than work, no other things, no other hobbies or anything.
I mean,
which is again, it's big. It's big. I mean, work is big. I get it. Like,
yeah. I say, would I do this if I wasn't being paid? And most of the time, it's a big, yes, don't tell that to my clients, right? But my favorite thing in the entire universe to do is to give a keynote. And my second favorite thing is to build that keynote around what the audience really should be hearing. And it's just, it's just so much fun. My only hobby, I guess, is I work out 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Last time I took a day off was in 2017 when I had a stomach flu.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I could use whatever you're taking. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So, wow, you threw me off. It's so great. If you could go back in time and tell your 20-year-old self something, what would it be?
Oh, that you have Crohn's disease.
Yeah, that's
right.
Duh. Yeah.
Absolutely number one.
Okay. So I have to ask this question. This is the Risk Never Sleeps podcast. What is the riskiest thing you've ever done?
The riskiest thing? Well, physically, I played 6 years varsity ice hockey.
You've been holding on. You've been holding out on us with the ice hockey.
Yeah, I did 6 years. I'm 5 feet tall and 90 to 95 pounds.
What position did you play?
First, I started out as the puck. No, I'm just kidding. I started out on left wing, and then by my 6th season, I was first line center.
Oh, wow.
I played for Kimball Union Academy up near Dartmouth. I played for Lawrence Academy in Groton, Massachusetts. Yeah. And then I played 2 years for Boston University, which is now a Division I school.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to be in it when it was Division I, but I got to be one of the leaders that really brought ice hockey to females, which was huge. Yeah.
Oh, and you went to BU.
Very dangerous.
And you went to BU? I take it, right? Yeah. Oh, I did. I went to Bentley, but I did ROTC at BU. So I was in the area quite often on Commonwealth and hung out at the Ratskeller. I don't know if you remember the Ratskeller. It was a punk bar back in the 80s.
Don't remember that one.
Yeah.
Although it was the 90s when I went, which makes me 29.
Okay, right. Well, I was not 27, so all right, 29. BU was a good time. Any of the bars bring back any memories? Did you go to the dugout? Was the dugout there when you were there?
I I cannot remember the names of any of the places. I remember dancing.
Oh,
So every once every couple of weeks, maybe we go dancing, and I just cannot remember what the name of the club was.
oh, yeah, there's a lot of good places, a lot of good clubs around there.
Yeah.
All right. So hockey, are you a Bruins fan? I don't want to say you're a Bruins. Are you a Bruins fan?
Of course. I'm from New Hampshire.
Okay. Well, you could be you could be a Canadiens fan. You're close to the border, I'm sure, but no.
Well, Bobby Orr signed my stick.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah, he came to one of the games to watch the guys, and then we were on right afterwards. So I got to meet him, and he saw a little bit of the girls.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. All right. So if you were on a desert island and you could bring 5 records with you, 5 music records with you, what would they be?
Oh, first of all, what's a music record? No, I'm just kidding.
I just dated myself. I meant CDs or streaming platforms or
my cassette tapes or my 8-tracks that I would bring.
Your cassettes. Okay.
Yeah. So it would be Lady Gaga, Shakira,
nice.
Rihanna.
These are all good dance for working out, good music for working out.
Exactly. Those are the people that I listen to on a daily basis on my Stairmaster and elliptical.
It's funny. How about movies? Do you like movies or?
I cannot remember the names of any movies I've watched because most of the time I'm on my computer and it's just kind of like background noise.
Yeah.
So I would have to think about that more. I know I probably watched one yesterday.
Well, let's talk about your desert island. Where do you love to travel most? Where's your favorite place in the world?
Well, Palo Alto. Where I live, yes, is my favorite place in the entire world. Why would I live somewhere that wasn't my favorite place in the world?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but I get to travel all over the world. And so I love mostly Western Europe. Is just fun for me, like France and Italy and Greece and Spain and all of those countries. Just, I love them. But I have been all over the world.
Nice. How did you get into speaking? Because oftentimes when they do this survey every so often, public speaking is like people's greatest fear. How did you get to become a public speaker?
So, first of all, I only take things on that scare me. So, I go for the really hard things to begin with. Yeah. But I was in Silicon Valley, and so I took pre-algebra when I was 6. And I was used to being
6 years old.
Yes. And used to having equal access to things like the hockey rink and my other sports, like lacrosse and field hockey. And we were treated equally to the boys. And then I moved to California and Silicon Valley, and suddenly I was no longer on an even playing ground, right? They're pretty abusive to women in some of the companies that I've been in. And so I was running through conferences at the time, and I looked at the speakers and I'm like, I could do that. And I'm like, that'll change the game. Not only will it help me in my career, secondly, I can, tell people about my ideas, and I can be, for the first generation, really in all of human history, famous for what I think, and not that I'm an actress or a singer or something like that. And lastly, I was like, you know what? I can really help people with this. And so I went home one night and I spent 2 days writing a 5-year project plan for myself on how to turn myself into a $20,000 keynote speaker. And it worked beyond my wildest dreams. I mean, it's been an incredible ride. And so for my very first keynote, I spent $10,000 on a designer because I didn't, I'm not like a professional keynote designer.
Yeah.
And then I practiced it 40 times, 40, right? I was going out on the same stage of a lot of these guys who were already charging $15,000 to $20,000. And I'd never given a keynote in my life. And so I just did the really hard work to be able to make that happen.
That is fantastic. When I struggled publicly speaking, believe it or not, and like most people, I froze up early on in my career, and I'm like, well, that's never going to happen again. So I began to read everything I could on public speaking and try to understand how are these people so successful publicly speaking, and very similar to I think what you did, right? And what I learned is, and I think what you learned probably instinctively, was that the difference between Steve Jobs, who I thought was probably one of the best public speakers ever, and the worst public speaker was something you mentioned, practice. And that was it. And that was it. That was the secret. It's just hard work. You have to put the time in. And if you practice the material so it is like it's natural and you're not relying on your slides and reading from your slides, and but you're telling a story. Yeah. Right? That's it. And that to me was this big aha moment. And no, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of people overcomplicate things, and it's just work. You just got to put the work in. You got to do the time.
It's hard work. I say you don't practice a keynote until you get it right. You practice it until you can't get it wrong. And then it comes out naturally, right? Yeah. And you can go on autopilot when you're on stage.
Yes.
I have zero stage right now. I've been a professional speaker for 11 years, and I think it's been a good 5 to 7 years since I've had any type of stage fright.
I love that. Yeah, because you do. I mean, one does have stage fright until you get to a point where you realize, okay, I just got to put the time in. And for those folks that are listening, there is the secret to presenting right there. So hopefully people will take that and become the next great public speaker.
I wrote a book on exactly how to do it.
You did?
So I've written 4 books, and my second one is called The Thought Leader Formula. My other ones are in AI and healthcare. But when the Me Too movement happened, I was like, okay, I don't think pulling down the guys out of their positions is really healthy for companies, for families. The women get re-traumatized. I don't think that's a good way to go. I said, you know what? I have a solution. Let's teach the women how to be professional speakers. Because that right there, it changes the power dynamic immediately. Like after my first book was published, it's called The Patient as CEO, How Technology Empowers the Healthcare Consumer. It was like flipping a light switch on any way that a man could push me down or abuse me in any way. All of a sudden, the guys were on horseback and I was in a tank.
That's a great image. I have 3 daughters. I'm going to make sure they listen to this podcast and watch this podcast. That's really great advice. What else? So last question. What other advice would you have to folks that are coming out of school and that want to get into healthcare?
Sure. So unless you're going to be a specialist, right, like a surgeon or a fertility doctor, I would say think about your career in 5 to 8 year increments, because they're not going to be doing anything that they thought they were going to do in like 2024. It's not going to be anywhere near that, like in 2040. Gone are the days where you have your whole entire career at a large blue chip company, right? And so you can reinvent yourself. And around that, don't let your education limit you, right? Because if you've only gone to medical school, does that really mean you can't be a CEO or you can't be a lawyer at some point in the future or a day trader? Like, do not let your education limit you.
I love that. Yeah, a lawyer and a day trader. You could be both, actually.
Exactly.
You could be a doctor, a lawyer, and a day trader, and a public speaker. Yeah, that's so true. Technology, if you learn how to harness the power of it, really opens up doors and is a lot less limiting than it was, 20 years ago for people coming out of school.
Exactly.
Yeah, yep. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing your journey today with folks. I really appreciate it, Robin.
Oh, thank you. I had a great time talking to you.
Thank you. This is Ed Gaudet from the Risk Never Sleeps podcast. And if you're on the front lines, delivering patient care and protecting patient safety, remember to stay vigilant, because risk never sleeps.